So picture this. The most boring day in galactic history is about to become the most interesting. We're talking about the signing of the Great Galactic Peace Accord of 2387, which sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry in zero gravity. But hey, when you've been at war for 200 years, even the most mind-numbing paperwork starts to look pretty appealing. The ceremony is taking place aboard Harmony Station, which is basically the galactic equivalent of a fancy hotel conference room, except it's floating in space and costs about 17 billion credits to rent for the afternoon. The station's main hall is packed with dignitaries from across the galaxy, all of them looking very important and very tired. You know that look people get when they've been in meetings for way too long. Yeah, multiply that by 2 centuries. On one side of the massive silver table sits Ambassador Quex of the Zephyrian Empire. Picture a 7-foot-tall purple mantis, wearing what can only be described as the galaxy's most expensive bathrobe, complete with enough metals to sink a small moon. Quex has been dreaming of this moment for decades, mostly because it means he can finally stop pretending to care about military strategy and get back to his real passion, collecting rare space orchids. Across from him lounges Admiral Vortok of the Krell Federation. If Quex is a purple mantis, then Vortok is what happens when you cross a shark with a computer and give it anger management issues. His metallic carapace gleams under the station's artificial lighting, and his multiple optical sensors keep darting around the room like he's calculating the blast radius of everyone present. Which, knowing the Krell, he probably is. The peace treaty itself is a marvel of bureaucratic engineering. We're talking about a document so comprehensive, so thoroughly researched, and so incredibly boring that it could probably be used as a sleep aid for insomniacs across 17 star systems. It covers everything from trade regulations to territorial boundaries, from cultural exchange protocols to the proper procedure for filing a complaint about your neighbor's music being too loud on a galactic scale. Both sides spent the better part of 5 years negotiating this thing, which is actually pretty impressive when you consider that they spent most of those 5 years trying not to blow each other up. The treaty establishes clear boundaries, creates trade partnerships, sets up cultural exchange programs, and even includes a clause about sharing technology for medical purposes. It's the kind of document that makes diplomats weep with joy and lawyers rub their hands together in anticipation of the fees. As Quex raises his ceremonial signing stylus, a device that costs more than most planets' annual budgets, he can't help but smile. Well, what passes for a smile when you have mandibles instead of lips? This treaty represents the culmination of his entire career, the moment when civilized beings finally chose reason over warfare. Admiral Vortok activates his biosignature scanner, the Krell equivalent of signing on the dotted line. His mechanical voice crackles through the universal translator as he speaks the traditional words of binding agreement. Today marks the beginning of a new era, an age of cooperation and mutual prosperity that will surely last for millennia. The assembled crowd erupts in polite applause, the kind of restrained clapping you get when everyone's wearing their best diplomatic behavior. Champagne is poured, or at least the closest thing to champagne that won't dissolve half the species present. Speeches are made about the bright future ahead, about the lessons learned from past conflicts, and about the unshakable bond between two great civilizations. What nobody knows, as they congratulate each other on their wisdom and foresight, is that a small blue and green planet on the edge of the galaxy has just figured out faster than light travel. And they're sending someone to say hello. About 3 hours into the celebration, right when everyone's starting to relax and the exotic alien cocktails are beginning to take effect, the station's proximity alarms start going off. Not the gentle chime that means incoming scheduled arrival, but the kind of blaring siren that usually means unidentified object approaching at inadvisable speeds. The object in question turns out to be Earth's first official interstellar vessel, the UES Determination. And let me tell you, calling it a vessel is being extremely generous. Picture a shipping container that someone welded rocket engines to, then covered the whole thing in duct tape and optimism. The hull is a patchwork of different metals, there's at least 3 different types of antenna sticking out at random angles, and someone has spray painted Earth or bust along the side in letters that are visible from orbit. The ship docks with all the grace of a drunk elephant attempting ballet. There's a concerning amount of sparking, several loud bangs that definitely shouldn't happen during a routine docking procedure, and the distinct smell of burning electronics that somehow manages to penetrate the station's air filtration system. Out of the airlock steps Jake Morrison, humanity's first interstellar ambassador. Jake looks exactly like what you'd expect from a species that just figured out space travel last Tuesday. He's wearing what appears to be a modified business suit with duct tape patches and hastily sewn-on mission patches. His hair is sticking up in 17 different directions, there's a coffee stain on his shirt that might actually be older than some of the civilizations present, and he's carrying a battered briefcase held together with hope and wire ties. The assembled dignitaries stare at him with the kind of polite confusion usually reserved for abstract art galleries. Jake, completely oblivious to the fact that he's just crashed the most important diplomatic event in galactic history, looks around the hall with the wide-eyed wonder of a tourist who's just realized he might be lost. "Wow," he says, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent hall, "this place is fancier than the Marriott." He pulls out what appears to be an actual smartphone, the kind with a cracked screen and a case held on with electrical tape, and starts taking pictures like he's on vacation. Ambassador Quex, his mandibles twitching in what might be curiosity or mild horror, approaches the newcomer. "Greetings, unknown being. I am Ambassador Quex of the Zephyrian Empire. Might I inquire as to your species and purpose?" Jake looks up from his phone, where he's apparently been trying to find a Wi-Fi signal. "Oh hey, sorry about that. I'm Jake Morrison from Earth. I'm here for the..." He pulls out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Galactic peace thing. Am I late? Traffic was murder, and my GPS kept trying to route me through a black hole." The silence that follows is the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if everyone in the room has suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Admiral Vortok's optical sensors whir and click as they focus on this strange new creature, running what are probably very sophisticated scans that keep coming back with results like definitely organic and possibly insane. Quex repeats, consulting a holographic star chart that materializes in front of him. "I am unfamiliar with this system. Oh, it's way out in the boonies," Jake says cheerfully, apparently not noticing that everyone is staring at him like he's just announced he's from the center of a star. "Third rock from the sun, mostly harmless. Great pizza. You guys ever heard of pizza? No? Oh man, you're missing out." He reaches into his briefcase and pulls out what can only be described as a diplomatic credential that was obviously printed at a Kinko's. "Here's my paperwork. Sorry it's a bit wrinkled, I had to keep it in my carry-on, and airline travel is just the worst, even in space." Vortok's mechanical voice crackles as he speaks for the first time since Jake's arrival. "Your species, you have achieved faster than light travel." "Oh yeah, just figured that out actually. Took us a while, but turns out you just have to think outside the box, or in our case, outside the laws of physics as we understood them. Funny thing, turns out we were overthinking it the whole time." Jake grins, completely missing the looks of barely concealed panic passing between the alien diplomats. "And your government sent you here to participate in our peace proceedings?" Quex asks, his voice carefully neutral in the way that screams, "I'm trying very hard not to have a diplomatic incident." "Well, more like they asked for volunteers, and I was the only one who wasn't doing anything important that weekend," Jake replies with stunning honesty. "Plus I've always wanted to see space, though to be honest, it's mostly just empty. Very disappointing really. The brochures made it seem way more exciting." He looks around the grand hall, taking in the elaborate decorations, the formally dressed aliens, and the massive treaty document still sitting on its ceremonial podium. "So what I miss? Did someone get married?" After about 20 minutes of increasingly awkward explanations about galactic politics, war, and the concept of a peace treaty, Jake finally seems to grasp the situation. Sort of. His response is classically human. "Oh cool, so you guys were fighting, and now you're not. That's great. Can I take a look at the paperwork?" Now any reasonable species would politely decline and maybe offer him some refreshments while they figured out how to diplomatically get rid of him. But Ambassador Quex, perhaps motivated by curiosity or possibly by the 3 glasses of Andromedan wine he'd consumed during the celebration, actually says yes. Jake pulls out a pair of reading glasses that have been repaired with tape, so many times they're more tape than glass, and starts flipping through the peace treaty. And let me tell you, watching a human read a galactic peace accord is like watching someone try to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions. Lots of squinting, occasional head tilting, and the growing certainty that something's not quite right. "Huh," Jake says after about 5 minutes. "This is pretty comprehensive. Very thorough. Lots of big words." He flips to another page. "Question though, what happens if someone wants to, I don't know, play a friendly game of space football? I don't see anything about recreational activities in here." Admiral Vortok's optical sensors focus with a mechanical whir. "Recreational activities. Yeah, you know, sports, competition. Fun stuff. Back on Earth, we've found that a good game of football or basketball does more for international relations than a dozen peace treaties. Nothing brings people together like arguing over whether that was a foul or not." The assembled diplomats exchange glances that roughly translate to, "Is this creature malfunctioning?" But Jake's just getting started. "And another thing," he continues, flipping through more pages with the casual confidence of someone who's never met a document he couldn't improve. "What about cultural exchange? I mean real cultural exchange. Not just this formal we will respect each other's traditions stuff. I'm talking about sharing the important things. Food, entertainment, art. You guys ever seen a reality TV show? because let me tell you, nothing says cultural diplomacy like watching someone eat bugs for money. Quex's mandibles twitch rapidly, which in Zephyrian body language roughly translates to "I'm having a stroke." You are suggesting we add recreational competitions, and what did you call it? Reality television, to our peace treaty. I'm just saying, Jake replies, pulling out a pen that's inexplicably covered in bite marks. Maybe we're overcomplicating things here. How about this? He actually starts writing in the margins of the treaty, which causes several guards to reach for their weapons, until Quex waves them off with a gesture that probably means let's see how this plays out. Instead of the Zephyrian Empire and the Krell Federation agree to maintain peaceful coexistence through the implementation of structured diplomatic protocols. How about the Zephyrians and the Krell promise not to shoot each other and maybe hang out sometimes? Much clearer, don't you think? The silence that follows is so profound that you can actually hear the station's life support systems humming in the background. Vortok's optical array cycles through what must be every scanning frequency he has, possibly searching for signs that Jake is some kind of elaborate practical joke. Furthermore, Jake continues, apparently interpreting the stunned silence as eager anticipation. I think you need a conflict resolution clause that actually makes sense. Right now, you've got this whole complex arbitration system with neutral mediators and formal proceedings. What if, and hear me out on this, what if instead you just had the people involved sit down with some pizza and beer and talk it out like adults? He flips to another section. Oh, and this part about maintaining appropriate cultural sensitivity during diplomatic exchanges. That's way too vague. You should be more specific. Like if someone's culture involves greeting people by slapping them with a fish, please warn the other person first so they don't think it's an assassination attempt. By now, several of the minor diplomats are making sounds that could be laughing or could be the early stages of nervous breakdowns. Jake, blissfully unaware that he's systematically deconstructing 200 years of careful diplomatic language, keeps going. And what's this about exclusive territorial sovereignty within designated sectors? Why not just say this is your stuff, that's our stuff? Don't mess with each other's stuff. Way easier to remember. He looks up from the treaty with the satisfied expression of someone who's just solved world hunger. You know what this really needs though? A barbecue clause. A barbecue clause. Quex manages to croak. Absolutely. Nothing says we're not going to war like a good old-fashioned barbecue. I'm thinking annual galactic cookout. Everyone brings something from their home world. We all hang out, maybe play some volleyball. Could even make it a competition. Nothing serious, just friendly rivalry. Zephyrian potato salad versus Krell, what do you guys eat anyway? Primarily processed organic compounds and occasionally our enemies. Vortok replies with mechanical precision. Okay, we'll work on that. Jake says without missing a beat. Point is you get people together for fun, instead of just stuffy meetings, and suddenly everyone's friends. It's basic human psychology. Well, human psychology. I assume it works for other species too, right? You guys do have fun, don't you? The question hangs in the air like a diplomatic grenade with the pin pulled. Because honestly, when was the last time anyone in this room had what could reasonably be called fun? Most of them have been so busy being important and dignified for so long that they've forgotten what fun even looks like. Jake closes the treaty with a satisfied thump. Anyway, those are just a few thoughts. Take them or leave them. Anyone know where I can get a decent cup of coffee around here? That stuff they served on my ship tasted like motor oil mixed with regret. What happens next is one of those beautiful disasters that could only occur when you mix human curiosity with alien bureaucracy and shake vigorously. See. Jake's innocent questions about the treaty aren't just annoying the diplomats, they're actually making them think. And thinking, as any politician will tell you, is extremely dangerous during a peace negotiation. It starts when some junior Krell attaché, a beetle-like creature whose name roughly translates to Third Assistant Undersecretary of Minor Territorial Disputes, actually starts scribbling notes during Jake's barbecue speech. Admiral Vortok notices this, and makes one of those mechanical clicking sounds that means explain yourself before I have you recycled into spare parts. Admiral, the attaché says nervously. The Earth creature raises an interesting point about territorial sovereignty. According to Article 247, subsection 12c, any system not explicitly claimed by either party defaults to neutral status pending formal colonization proceedings. Vortok's optical array swivels toward Quex with the kind of mechanical precision that makes clicking sounds like weapons being loaded. Ambassador, surely your legal team reviewed the territorial clauses. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Quex's mandibles start doing that rapid twitching thing again, but this time it's not confusion, it's panic. because suddenly he's remembering a conversation from about 6 months ago when his own legal counsel mentioned something about potential gray areas in the territorial definitions that they were sure wouldn't be a problem. Of course we reviewed them, Quex says, but his voice has that quality that universally translates to "I am in so much trouble right now." The territorial boundaries are clearly established according to the Galactic Coordinate System, Revision 12. Revision 12. The Krell attache's mandibles practically light up. Admiral, we've been using Revision 15 throughout our planning documents. The coordinate drift between revisions would place at least 17 disputed systems in completely different territories. Jake, who's been trying to flag down what might be a waiter to ask about that coffee, notices the sudden tension in the room. Everything okay over there? You guys look like someone just told you there's no more pizza. The territorial definitions, Vortok states in a voice that could freeze helium, appear to have some discrepancies. Oh, that's rough. Jake says sympathetically. We had the same problem with my neighbor's fence back home, turned into a whole thing. Property survey was wrong by like 3 feet. Suddenly we're arguing over who owns the rose bushes. Very awkward at barbecues. He pauses thoughtfully. That actually ended up in court for 2 years. Cost us both more than the stupid fence was worth. This comparison does not improve the mood in the room. What follows is about 20 minutes of increasingly frantic cross-referencing, as both delegations realize that their airtight peace treaty has more holes than Swiss cheese made by particularly enthusiastic space termites. It turns out that the discrepancies in the coordinate systems aren't the only problem. Jake's casual questions have inadvertently highlighted several other issues that everyone was hoping the other side wouldn't notice. For instance, his innocent query about what happens if someone accidentally colonizes a planet reveals that neither side has actually defined what constitutes accidental colonization. This becomes relevant when it's discovered that the Krell have been conducting scientific research on 14 planets in what was supposed to be neutral space, while the Zephyrians have been establishing cultural observation posts on 11 worlds that are technically in Krell territory. So wait, Jake says, still trying to follow the increasingly heated discussion. You guys signed a peace treaty without actually agreeing on who owns what. The territorial divisions were clearly established through the Trilateral Commission of 2381. Quex insists, pulling up holographic displays that show vast swaths of space color-coded in purple and blue. According to the modified Brussels Convention, as amended in 2384, Vortok counters, displaying the same regions in completely different colors. Jake squints at the overlapping holograms. I'm no expert, but it looks like you both think you own that big yellow star thingy in the middle. The silence that follows is the kind of quiet that comes right before someone starts throwing things. The Proxima Goldilocks system, Quex says slowly, has been a Zephyrian protectorate since 2378. Incorrect. Vortok replies with the kind of mechanical calm that suggests hidden weapons are powering up. It was ceded to Krell administration following the Treaty of Seven Suns. Yeah, that's not going to end well, Jake observes with the wisdom of someone who's watched this exact argument play out in countless neighborhood association meetings. You know what you need? A neutral third party to mediate. Someone with no stake in the outcome, who can look at this objectively. Both ambassadors turn to stare at him with expressions that could generously be called homicidal. Oh no, Jake says, backing away with his hands raised. Don't look at me like that. I'm just here to observe. I don't even know where most of these places are. I got lost twice just finding the bathroom. But the damage is done. Other delegates are now pulling out their own tablets and star charts, cross-referencing trade agreements, cultural accords and protection treaties. The beautiful comprehensive peace agreement that took 5 years to negotiate is unraveling faster than a cheap sweater in a washing machine. Accusations start flying. The Zephyrians claim the Krell deliberately used outdated coordinate systems to obscure their illegal territorial expansion. The Krell counter that the Zephyrians have been operating under diplomatic immunity they were never actually granted. Someone brings up a mining rights dispute from 2374. Another delegate mentions an incident involving unauthorized research on sentient fungi. Within an hour, both delegations are storming out of the hall in opposite directions. The peace treaty is being declared null and void. And someone is definitely making threats about resuming military operations. Jake, meanwhile, is standing in the middle of the chaos, still holding his crumpled coffee cup from the vending machine he finally found, watching two civilizations march back toward war with the expression of someone who's just realized he might have accidentally knocked over the first domino. Well, he says to the empty hall, that could have gone better. 3 days later, Jake Morrison sits in what used to be the galaxy's fanciest diplomatic suite and is now essentially his personal prison cell. The Harmony Station management, clearly unsure what to do with the human who single-handedly torpedoed galactic peace, has given him a room with a great view of both fleets preparing for war. And boy, what a view it is. The Zephyrian fleet looks like someone took a bunch of purple cathedrals and strapped engines to them, while the Krell Armada resembles a swarm of metallic hornets armed with weapons that could probably crack planets. Both fleets are positioning themselves on opposite sides of the station like cosmic school bullies getting ready to rumble. Jake spends most of his time watching the news feeds, which are having an absolute field day. Headlines like "Human destroys galactic peace in single afternoon" and "Earth ambassador causes first diplomatic catastrophe" keep scrolling past. His personal favorite is "Local man ruins everything, a galactic perspective." On the morning of the fourth day, Jake wakes up to the sound of weapons charging. Both fleets have moved into attack positions, and the situation has officially gone from diplomatically awkward to we're all about to become space dust. The station's automated systems keep announcing evacuation procedures in 17 different languages, most of which sound increasingly panicked. That's when Jake has what he'll later describe as either a brilliant idea or a complete mental breakdown. Possibly both. He marches down to the communications center, where the terrified station administrator, a jellyfish-like being named Coordinator Blip, is trying to mediate between two very angry fleets via subspace radio. "Mind if I give this a shot?" Jake asks, gesturing to the communication array. Blip's tentacles quiver in what might be laughter or hysteria. "Human Jake Morrison, you have already caused sufficient chaos. Perhaps you should remain in your quarters until the shooting stops." "Here's the thing though," Jake says, settling into the communication chair like he owns the place. "I've been thinking about this whole situation, and I think we're all missing the point." Before Blip can stop him, Jake activates the open channel to both fleets. His voice echoes across space to reach both armadas, which are currently locked in the kind of standoff that usually ends with someone becoming cosmic debris. "Hey there, Admiral Vortok, Ambassador Quex. It's Jake, from Earth. Remember me?" "Yeah, I know. I'm probably not your favorite person right now." His voice carries that casual, slightly apologetic tone of someone who's just realized he might have borrowed his friend's car and accidentally driven it into a lake. The response from both flagships is immediate and loud. Lots of shouting in various alien languages, most of which doesn't need translation to understand the general sentiment. Okay, I get it," Jake continues, apparently immune to death threats delivered in mechanical monotones and mandible clicks. "You guys are mad at me. Fair enough. I came here, asked some questions, and now you're back to shooting at each other. But here's what I don't understand. Why are you mad at each other? I'm the one who screwed things up." There's a pause in the hostile chatter, possibly because this is not how these conversations usually go. "Look," Jake says, and his voice takes on the kind of earnest sincerity that can only come from someone who genuinely means well despite causing massive amounts of trouble. "I've been watching you guys gear up for war these past few days, and all I can think about is how stupid this whole thing is." More angry chittering from the fleets, but Jake powers through. "You spent 200 years fighting each other. 200 years. Do you know what humans were doing 200 years ago? We were still figuring out steam engines and arguing about whether surgery should be performed with clean hands. And now here you are, two of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, about to go back to blowing each other up because your paperwork was sloppy." The communication channels have gone quiet now, which Jake takes as encouragement. "So here's my proposal, and before you start shooting it down because it comes from the idiot who ruined your peace treaty, just hear me out. What if instead of going back to war, we try something different? Something simple." He pauses, probably for dramatic effect, though knowing Jake it might just be because he's forgotten what he was going to say. "What if you just don't fight? I know, it sounds crazy, but think about it. You're not fighting because you hate each other anymore. You're fighting because you can't agree on paperwork. That's like burning down your house because you can't agree on the paint color." The silence stretches across space, filled only by the hum of charging weapons and the distant sound of Coordinator Blip having what appears to be a nervous breakdown. "Here's what I'm thinking," Jake continues. "Forget the treaties. Forget the complicated legal frameworks, and the territorial agreements and all that bureaucratic nonsense. How about this, Mies? You just shake hands and agree not to be jerks to each other. Start small, maybe get together once a month for coffee and see how it goes. If someone has a problem, you sit down and talk about it like adults instead of lawyers." By now several other species monitoring the situation have tuned into this frequency, probably expecting to witness either a breakthrough in diplomatic relations or the spectacular end of human civilization. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You try being nice to each other for a year, and if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to shooting each other. The weapons will still be there. But maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that you actually like not being at war. Jake leans back in the chair, apparently satisfied with his diplomatic speech. Anyway, that's my suggestion. Take it or leave it. I'm going to go find some lunch because apparently stress makes me hungry, and watching people gear up for war is surprisingly stressful. He reaches for the communication switch, then pauses. Oh, and Admiral Vortok, Ambassador Quex. For what it's worth, I think you're both pretty decent people. Entities. Whatever. Point is, the galaxy would be a lot better place if you two were friends instead of enemies. With that, Jake Morrison, Earth's first interstellar diplomat, signs off and heads to the cafeteria, leaving behind 2 fleets, thousands of diplomats, and the complete bewilderment of half the galaxy. 6 months later, the Galactic News Network runs a story that breaks every precedent in interstellar journalism. The headline reads, Zephyrian-Krell relations reach historic peacetime high, which would be impressive enough on its own, except for the accompanying photo showing Admiral Vortok and Ambassador Quex sharing what appears to be drinks and laughing at something on a tablet. Jake, now sporting the official title of Chief Galactic Mediator, a position that apparently comes with excellent health benefits and an unlimited coffee allowance, watches the news feed from his new office aboard Harmony Station. His office is exactly what you'd expect from someone who stumbled into intergalactic diplomacy: filing cabinets held together with duct tape, a coffee machine that's definitely seen better days, and a desk covered in what appears to be a mixture of important diplomatic documents and takeout menus from 17 different star systems. The transformation has been by all accounts remarkable. What started as Jake's desperate attempt to prevent a war has somehow evolved into the most successful peace initiative in galactic history. The secret, it turns out, is that nobody really wanted to go back to fighting in the first place. They just didn't know how to stop being officially angry at each other. Jake's handshake diplomacy bypassed centuries of accumulated grievances and legal precedents by the simple expedient of ignoring them entirely. Instead of trying to resolve every territorial dispute and trade disagreement, the Zephyrians and Krell just agreed to work things out as they came up, like reasonable beings having reasonable conversations. The monthly coffee meetings Jake suggested have become legendary throughout the diplomatic corps. What started as awkward small talk between 2 former enemies has evolved into a genuine friendship that's made both civilizations realize how much energy they'd been wasting on being mad at each other. Admiral Vortok, it turns out, has a passion for ancient Zephyrian poetry, while Ambassador Quex is fascinated by Krell engineering principles. They've started collaborating on a project to build a space station that's both aesthetically pleasing and functionally efficient, which has resulted in plans for what architects are calling the most beautiful piece of functional architecture in the known galaxy. The barbecue clause Jake suggested has also become reality, though it's evolved into something more sophisticated than backyard grilling. The annual Galactic Cultural Exchange, as it's now officially called, brings together species from across both empires to share food, entertainment, and stories. Last year's event featured everything from Zephyrian interpretive dance to Krell precision hover juggling, and concluded with what Jake describes as the best interspecies karaoke night in galactic history. Other civilizations have started requesting Jake's mediation services, though he's still not entirely sure what he's doing. His methods remain decidedly unconventional. He once resolved a century-old mining dispute by suggesting both parties share the asteroid and split the profits, which apparently nobody had thought to try before. Another time, he ended a diplomatic crisis between the Andromedans and the Centauri Federation by pointing out that they were basically arguing over who had to take responsibility for a planet nobody actually wanted. Jake's success has led to what political scientists are calling the Morrison Protocol, a new approach to diplomacy that prioritizes practical solutions over legal frameworks and emphasizes personal relationships over institutional structures. Several universities have started offering courses in applied human diplomacy, though Jake points out that calling it a method is probably giving him too much credit. As Jake finishes his morning coffee and prepares for another day of accidentally solving interstellar conflicts, he reflects on how weird his life has become. Last year he was managing a small office supply company in Ohio, and now he's apparently responsible for maintaining peace between civilizations that could wipe out solar systems. His computer chimes with an incoming message from Ambassador Quex, who's become something of a friend over the past few months. The message reads, "Jake Vortok and I are having our weekly strategy discussion tonight. Care to join us for dinner? We're trying that new Regalian restaurant on Deck 7. Fair warning, Bertok insists on ordering the flaming tentacle dish again." Jake grins and types back, "Wouldn't miss it, I'll bring the antacids." He leans back in his chair looking out the viewport at the peaceful space around Harmony Station. A Zephyrian diplomatic vessel passes by a Krell science ship, and Jake can see through the windows that the crews are actually waving at each other. Not the formal diplomatic gestures he'd seen during his first visit, but genuine friendly waves. Sometimes Jake reflects, the simplest solutions really are the best ones. Who knew that the secret to galactic peace was just asking people to be nice to each other and follow through with actual friendship? It probably helps that most species in the galaxy are deep down, just as tired of fighting as humans get tired of arguing with their neighbors about fence lines. Jake's tablet buzzes with a reminder about his next appointment. Apparently, the Silicon-based Life Alliance and the Carbon Coalition are having a disagreement about planetary development rights. According to the preliminary reports, it's a complex issue involving resource allocation, environmental concerns, and approximately 14 different treaty violations. Jake Morrison, Chief Galactic Mediator, former office supply manager, and the man who accidentally ended a 200-year war by asking obvious questions, finishes his coffee and heads off to his next meeting. His plan, as always, is remarkably simple: listen to what everyone has to say, ask a few questions, and see if he can get them all to agree to just be reasonable about it. It's not the most sophisticated diplomatic strategy in galactic history, but so far it's worked pretty well.